So, yeah. This whole train wreck that is AI, it's been causing nothing but problems for our devices simply just by existing. In my case, ever since Microsoft forced Copilot onto my Dell XPS, my laptop has been having a ton of memory issues. Now, I'm well aware of Dell's massive bloatware problem, but typically the amount of bloat running in the background results in my computer using 4 gigabytes of memory at idle right on startup, which again is already pretty bad. After Copilot self-installed, however, now my XPS is resting at 10 gigs used at idle. At idle! We've more than doubled our idle RAM usage just to make sure some bullshit shareholder-pleasing software is running in the background at your beck and call, only to never be used? What the fuck? So now we've got a problem. My laptop now only has 6 gigs of RAM left for running Windows Explorer, Firefox, Excel, SolidWorks, Notepad++. I also like to have Apple Music in the background while I work as well. And I'm not using those applications lightly, by the way. SolidWorks gives me the most amount of grief since it's the most hardware performance dependent program that I use. And that application in particular is not happy about Copilot hogging its precious memory. And because Microsoft is not smart enough to recognize their stupidity, they decided that you can't uninstall Copilot, at least not easily. If you're one of those nerds who knows how to hack deep into the root of Windows to uninstall a useless bloat, good for you, do that. But I'm not smart enough to manipulate software like that. My extent to my programming knowledge beyond C and C, M and G is only bits and pieces of Swift and Python. That's it. So I'm choosing another option that I'm more familiar with to solve the problem. A more hands-on solution. Despite the unfortunate majority of laptops moving away from having upgradable components, my Dell XPS 9720 is surprisingly one of the few laptops that still lets you upgrade both the memory and the storage. I don't need any more storage at this moment, so in this video, I'll just be upgrading the memory from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes. So, without further ado, let's change the camera angle and open up the laptop. For a tool set, I just bought a basic iFixit kit from Walmart for $30. But more specifically, you will need a Torx T5 screwdriver and a spudger pry tool of some kind. Also, when replacing your memory, check to see if your system is using either DDR4 or DDR5, as I believe they are not interchangeable. And don't get one stick with the full amount of capacity. You should purchase 2 sticks of SODIMM memory that add up to the full amount of capacity you're targeting. In my case, I bought 2 16 gigabyte DDR5 SODIMM sticks, upgrading me from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes of memory. On the back of the laptop, unscrew the 8 T5 screws securing the bottom aluminum plate. Once you remove all 8 screws, you will need to pry off the aluminum plate from the rest of the chassis. Thankfully, the plate is held in by clips instead of adhesive, but as you can see me attempt to pry it off, it's not an easy task, because while it requires some force to pull off the panel, you can't pull too hard or you'll bend it and render it useless. Once you finally get the panel removed, we can now see the internals of the computer. Before we do anything inside the computer, disconnect the battery from the rest of the system. You don't need to remove the whole battery, just make sure it's unplugged. You'll find your memory modules underneath these 2 black paper plasticky flaps. The memory is secured in by a clip on each side of the module. Spread the clips apart and the stick should pop out on one side. You can now remove the stick. Do the same with the other module. Unbox your new memory. When inserting the new modules, they only go in one way. Slip the memory in until the key fits into the slot. Push the stick back down until the clips snap back into place. Do the same with the other module. With the memory secured, plug the battery back into the motherboard. Place the aluminum panel back on and clip it in. This part should be much easier than removing it. Screw the 8 T5 screws back on and voila! Upgrade complete. It's time to turn the system back on. During this step, you might think you accidentally broke the computer, but don't worry. It's just freaking out because we disconnected disconnected all power, and we modified the hardware configuration. When we first turn it on, it won't display anything for a few minutes. This is because the computer needs to learn and train the new memory. This can take up to 15 minutes. If you don't get a display after 20 minutes, you might need to open the laptop back up and reseat the modules. Eventually, once the computer finishes memory training, it will display a screen explaining it detected you changed the hardware configuration. It will ask if you want to go into the BIOS to modify anything, but I just hit continue and boot into Windows normally. To my surprise, the only thing that went wrong in the process was I accidentally cut my finger while attempting to remove the bottom plate. It hurt for the next 24 hours, but it wasn't that bad. However, I'm still not particularly pleased that I had to do this in the first place. This XPS was purchased for around $2,000 and spec'd with a 12th gen Intel Core i7-12700H, 16 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, half a terabyte of SSD storage, and an NVIDIA RTX 3050 GPU. No, it wasn't top of the line specs, but for the first couple of years before the whole Copilot launch, these were enough to run my busy workflow just fine, and with room to spare. But thanks to idiots looking for a quick cash grab, Microsoft somehow found a way to cause problems for a decent system like this. And I guess a quick review of the XPS over the past nearly 3 years now, I still have the same sentiment as my original review. The hardware of this laptop is awesome. Great specs, nice big 17-inch display, keyboard is nice to type on if I'm working away from my desk, and the trackpad is pretty good for not being an Apple trackpad. I'm serious when I say this. Dell knows how to competently build a laptop. And considering with this high end of a machine, they were still able to allow you to upgrade the RAM and the storage and still keep the device pretty thin, no complaints. But despite the awesome hardware, the reason I still go back to my MacBook outside of work has to do with the software. As demonstrated, the hardware can only be as good as the software allows it to be. And I've said this about iPads, and I've said this about every PC out there. It never mattered how high end of the system I used. Windows reduced it to a pile of unusable e-waste. I still often get Windows bugs randomly happening with this laptop all the time. Failure to identify file types, network connectivity, and half the time I started up the NVIDIA GPU doesn't fire up. It'll only fire up the CPU's integrated graphics, which drastically hurts SolidWorks performance. I had to attempt 4 restarts at one point just to get the NVIDIA to fire up. And I've been using Windows for far many more years than macOS. I actively chose to leave Windows because of this bullshit. I don't hate PCs. I never have. But every time I use them, the software just ruins the experience, resulting in wasting time, sanity, and money. Honestly, if SolidWorks were to optimize their program for Mac, then I probably wouldn't need this XPS in the first place, since I work much more efficiently on the Mac. Sure, macOS has its fair share of dumb design decisions, but at the end of the day, they don't slow me down anywhere near as bad as Windows. Thanks for watching, and do us a favor and interact with the buttons below. Also, do me a favor and check out my Patreon page. I would seriously appreciate that. This is the Random Alpha Gadgets, signing out. My Dell XPS, my laptop that, oh shoot, come on, is running in the background at the back. Shoot, nope. Despite the unfortunate majority of my tablet going to sleep, why do you want to go to sleep? Stop it. Despite the unfortunate majority of laptops moving away from having upgradable components, I cannot win, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot win. That's the garage. That's what happens when you live above a garage. You will need to pry off the aluminum plate from the rest of the body. Oops, oh, wrong word. I can read. Push the stick back down until the clip snapped back. I cannot English. With the memory secured, plug the laptop back into the motherboard. It's a battery, you idiot. It will display a screen explaining it detected your change. Oh. No, that's right. This is what happens when you're reading one. This is what happens when you don't proofread your script. Great specs, my tablet going to sleep, because why wouldn't it? And considering my tablet's still not doing, what the hell?